find information about the courses. The website address is woodlandinfo.org. And if you look under that site, there's a section called Woodland Workshops, and there's the Learn About Your Land series. If you click at the very bottom, or if you look at the very bottom, it does have the Internet series. And if you click on that, that will take you to the page specifically for this Internet series. And if there are any updates that we have, we'll put them on there. However, if you scroll down, you'll see the classes. And here's our first class today, Assistance with Your Woodlands. And we do have some publications posted that go along with this topic for you to review. We didn't introduce this to you beforehand, so we don't expect you to do your homework beforehand, but if you are interested, you can check out those publications before, or you can reference them after. They will be available at any time in the future. And those are PDF documents, so you'll need Adobe Acrobat Reader in order to open those. We should be posting the recordings on here as well, and that will again be associated by topic, so you'll probably find it right in this blank white space in the future. And if that doesn't work, we'll at least be able to post the PDF version of the presentation. We'll let you know at the next session how we end up doing that. So I wanted to show you one other thing before we start, and that's how you guys ask questions. This is what you should be seeing on your screen as what I'm going to call the GoToWebinar pod. At the top, you'll of course see the audio mode, and so you should just have lines showing up on the sound side of that. And then if you want to type in questions, you just go ahead and enter a question in this space right here and hit send. And it will be sent to both Bill and myself, and I'll be jumping in and asking him the questions. Also, I did want to let you know that we will be saving all of the questions that are asked today from this session and also this evening when we repeat this session, and all those questions will be posted as a PDF on our website as well. So you'll be able to see, if we don't get to your question, we will answer it, and you'll be able to see all the answers to those questions. So with that, I guess I will introduce Bill Clace. Bill is a colleague of mine. He's the Basin Educator for Natural Resources as well in northern Wisconsin. And he also works for the University of Wisconsin Extension. And he's been with Extension for 6 years now? 10 years, wow. So with that, I will transfer this over to Bill. And again, feel free to type in your questions whenever you want. And if you're having issues, technical assistance, I'll try and assist you with that as well. However, this is my first time using this as a live format, so I may not be able to get to all the technical questions. So with that, I'm going to transfer to Bill.
Okay, thanks, Chris. And I would like to welcome everybody to this first session in the series of oh, okay. Chris reminded me that we'd like to ask you some questions throughout these presentations that we'll be giving to get some information, get some feedback from you on a number of items that we're interested in learning more about you, and to help craft the presentations we'll be giving during the session. So I need to give it back. Nope, okay. Sorry about that. I guess we'll just get started. And like I said, there will be a couple polls as we go through this. So, okay, so folks can be answering the polls right now. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me just clarify real quick what these polls are. They are interactive, so you can vote and just click on by the dot that is most relevant to you. So we will have some other questions later about the topic in particular, but we just wanted to get a feel for how people were connected at this point. And then I have 4 questions I'm going to ask you now, and we have 2 more questions that will pop up during the middle of the session. All right, we have 94% voted. I'll give you 10 more seconds and then we'll close the poll. All right, 100% voted. So actually, I'll just, in case you all want to see, looks like most people are connected with DSL. And probably good. We were mostly concerned that people were going to be using dial-up, and so we're glad that that's not the case. So let me ask you 2 more questions. This one is in particular, if we decide in the future to allow people to raise their hand and ask questions during this session, we just want to know how many people actually have access to a microphone. So go ahead and vote now. All right, 100% have voted. So I'm going to close that. And again, I'll just share it with you. It looks like most people don't have a microphone. So we'll, at this point, like I said, we'll just continue to go with questions using that question pod from earlier. One more question here. %, have voted. I'm going to give you a couple more seconds and just see if anyone else wants to chime in. All right, and our last one is just in reference to our final session. For those of you that are joining us for all of the sessions, we have not determined a topic for the last one. We thought we would let you all decide. So here's your chance to vote for which should be our last session topic. All right. Well, I will tell you that right now it looks like insects and diseases. We will be asking this question again this evening of the folks who attend this evening session. And depending on what our attendance looks like today, we might ask it again at the next session as well. But at this point, those of you that voted for insects and diseases, it might be coming your way. So with that, I'm going to let Bill begin.
Okay, thanks again, Chris. As Chris said, my name is Bill Clace. I'm a UW Extension based and educator from Natural Resources, and I work out of the Rhinelander office, DNR office. And my specialty is actually forestry. I have a background in forestry, and so I know a little bit about it, but I don't have the notion at all that I'll be giving you all the information you need to manage your woodlots in this next hour or so. And in fact, I think with the way I'm pursuing or doing this presentation is that I'm going to give you kind of some tips and some just like a whirlwind tour of all of that, some of the stuff that might be available to you that'll help you reach your goals for your property in the way of programs that are out there and people that are available to you that can offer some technical and financial assistance to help meet your goals. All right, and today we'll be covering a number of topics. Like I said, we'll start with looking at some of the programs that are available to you, including some of the most popular ones and the ones that you might have the most success getting some funding from. And the people that you can avail yourselves of for technical assistance, we'll talk about what foresters can do for you and what to look for in a logger. And we'll end with some resources that are available both in websites and organizations that can be a connection to other woodland owners and offer you some assistance beyond what I've already mentioned in the way of peoples and programs. Okay, so let's jump into what programs are out there that you can avail yourself of. And we'll start with a program called the Wisconsin Forest Landowner Grant Program. The acronym is called WIFLGAP, and it's a DNR administered and program. So it's the DNR Foresters, the Division of Forestry of the Division of Forestry in each county that will be administering this program and who you'll be talking to get more information about this program. And it's run like a cost share program in that you'll do some kind of activity, pay for it, and then the grant will reimburse you up to 50% of the cost of certain eligible practices. So it doesn't cover all practices, just certain practices, and I'll go into more of those practices in detail in the next slide. But it's designed for people who own somewhere between 10 and 500 acres of forested land and have a forest stewardship plan or are interested in pursuing a forest stewardship plan. And the grants range from between $200 and $10,000. Now, there's two levels of practices that they fund through this program, and most of the funding goes towards practices that the DNR feels are a higher priority and that they'd like to see be accomplished more often. And these include things like developing a plan, a forest management or forest stewardship plan for your property, doing some kind of reforestation or afforestation, which is just a fancy way of saying planting trees either in an old forest or in an old agriculture field or meadow or something to create a forest. And doing some kind of timber stand improvement practices. It might be pruning trees or thinning trees. Those are the practices that get most of the money that's available for this program. But there's also some other practices that they fund depending on how much they have left over after they funded these other practices. And these are things like protecting soil and water and stream and wetlands and rare species and natural communities and doing some kind of wildlife and habitat improvement programming. So as I said, you're going to need to work with the DNR on putting together an application and getting an application. And it's really good to talk with your local, the county DNR forester in the county that your land is located in about what you want to accomplish on your property and see if the WIFLGAP program is something that might work well for you. And I encourage you, if you're interested in developing a forest stewardship plan, this is a great program to get some funding for that. Right now, if you want to develop a plan for your property and need to pay someone for it, it can run between $500 and $1,000 depending on your situation. So if you're interested in doing that, this is a great way to go about getting some funding to help pay for that. Applications are accepted year-round and awards are given 4 times a year. I encourage you to work with a DNR forester if you're interested in doing this. Now, there's some more information on the Forestry Facts number 92 that Chris pointed out at the website for the Learn About Your Land Internet series that offers some more information about the program, and you can also get a link to the website where there's more information about the WIFLGAP program on this document called Web Resources in the same location. And I encourage you to, I'll be going through a lot of different links in this presentation, and all of them are located on this Web Resources document. So you don't feel like you have to write them down if you can still get access to that particular file on the website. All right, the next program I'd like to talk about is administered by the Natural Resources Conservation Service, or NRCS. They used to be called the Soil Conservation Service, and now they've expanded their venue to anything related to natural resources. And their program is the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, called EQIP, is the acronym. It's another voluntary conservation program, and whose goal is to support agricultural producers in the way of conserving natural resources. Now, you might think, well, does this really apply to me? But in fact, when I've talked to the district conservationists, who are the field personnel working in NRCS offices, they've said that they consider a woodland a resource that they'd like to work with. They consider, if your crop, instead of it being corn, your crop is trees. And so, yes, they're willing to work with woodland owners on doing conservation programs. And so the last sentence in my slide, it says that you must make $1,000 per year in agriculture products. Well, they figure that you'll be harvesting trees at some point in your life, most likely harvesting trees some point in your ownership of that land, so that qualifies as an agricultural product. Now, instead of this being a cost share program like the WIFLGAT program, it's more of a flat rate payment schedule that you get for different activities. And you also get some financial, this kind of financial flat rate payment schedule, and you also get technical assistance from the district conservationists. And they're actually really good at certain aspects of their jobs really fit well with woodland management. And so I'll talk a little bit more about where their niche is in this whole scheme of things in a second. But the sign-up period is actually right now. It started in December 1st, 2008, and runs through the end of this month. So if you're interested, when I get to the end of this, I'll give you a link that you can connect to them, contact your local NRCS office, and talk to their district conservationists and see what they can do for you. But I'll have some more information about this program in the next couple more slides, too. Now, the priorities for the funding for this program are really driven by local concerns. And what the NRC has done is form these local work groups to identify what the local resource concerns are and then prioritize funded activities that are willing to fund based on that. So in some parts of the states, I'll give you an example. Some parts of the states is very agriculture heavy, and so the priorities might be more of windbreaks or in the way of tree planting or buffers along streams to protect from soil erosion. So, whereas in other parts of the states, the priorities might be very different. So it's going to depend very much on which part of the state you're in to see which of the priorities are going to be higher or lower for these different activities. And so the pool of funds for each area is going to be allocated based on these priorities. Just something to keep in mind if you're going to pursue this kind of funding, that maybe the activities that you want to do won't be a high priority for the local work group that your land is located in. Okay, let's start talking a little bit about what they're willing to pay for. And I said it's a flat rate, so if you're interested in doing some tree planting or shrub establishment, things like that, they're willing to fund you up to from $120 to $425 per acre. It includes things like weed control and tree shelters, which can be really important aspects if you're putting in a large group of trees to control the competing vegetation that's going to come up when you plant trees, or mowing, or either through mowing or the use of herbicides. Next up are windbreaks and shelter belt establishment. They're willing to pay $1.80 per lineal foot to establish a windbreak or a shelter belt. If that's something you're interested in, that's not a bad bit of funding to help you accomplish a development of a windbreak. And this is I'm giving you just a brief overview of these kind of rates. I encourage you, if you're interested to learn more about it, to contact the local NRCS person, the district conservationist, to get more details about what those actual rates mean and what exactly they'll be funding. If you're interested in doing some forest land improvement activities, they can fund from $45 to $200 per acre. And much of the focus is on forest health issues, like if you have invasive species you want to remove, or if you have an insect or disease problem in your forest. Those are the kind of activities they tend to fund more often than not. And here's where their strengths, I believe their strengths really are, is this development and maintenance of forest trails and landings. And the district conservationists I talk to say they've got the engineers on their staff that are well trained in developing roads and soil conservation. And so if you're interested in putting in those kind of things or improving what you have now, these are some great folks to work with to accomplish that. And like I said, if you want to apply, you need to talk to the conservationists in your county, or that work in your county. There might not be, some of them work in several counties, so you need to find the one that works in your particular county. They're really, they work best on a one-to-one basis. Many of them, if they have time, they'll come out to your land and take a look at what you have, depending on your schedule and how busy they are. But their sign-up is continuous year-round, but the ranking period is in November and December. And if you're interested in learning more about EQIP, again, you can go to this web resources document that I've mentioned already, or their website at nrcs.usda.gov. And you can go to the Wisconsin page under there, and you can get more information about the Wisconsin program. Okay, I'm about to jump into the next section of the program on the Managed Forest Law program. I'd like to do a little poll first before we get started to find out what you know about Managed Forest Law program. So if you guys would please check your answers as appropriate for you. Okay, we're at 84%. Just a few more seconds. Let everybody get a chance to vote. Five more seconds. All right, here are the results. Looks like we're a bit all over the place. Most people have heard of it, or many people have heard of it, and know a little bit about it. So that's pretty common here in Wisconsin. People know a little bit about it. They know someone that has been involved with it, and now are and maybe but I don't know much more beyond that. How do I get back to my? Thank you. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the Managed Forest Law program. Here's another program that's administered by the Department of Natural Resources Division of Forestry. So it's your local DNR Foresters that work in the county your land is that your land is located in that you need to talk to if you're interested in learning more about this program. And what most people don't know about this program is that its primary goal is to produce forest products through sustainable forest management to feed the pulp and sawmills here in Wisconsin. And many people don't also realize that the second biggest industry in the state is the forest products industry, second behind the tourism industry. And so this law was put together to help support that industry. And the needs of that industry is for raw forest products like saw logs and pulpwood. And so the primary focus of this program is to continue to feed those mills. And there's many of them throughout the state. Some of them are probably some small and some large and some medium-sized, located even in the counties that you live in or the counties that your land is located in. You might not even know it. There's some additional goals with this program, including improve the forest resources and incorporate your objectives in the management of your land to where they're compatible with these primary goals. And the last one is to provide public access. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but in short, the program is designed to increase the recreational possibilities for folks in Wisconsin on the lands here in the state. Okay, some benefits to you for joining or participating in the Managed Forest Law program. You get a management plan. You'll need to have one before you can apply, but you'll go through a process where you can get a sustainable forest management plan. And I'll talk a little bit more about what is in that plan for the Managed Forest Law program. But it's actually a nice thing to have in that it spells out what's going to happen, how you're going to manage your property to fit the goals that you've identified for it. You also when you participate in the program, you'll also be certified under a certification system that says that you manage your forest in a sustainable way. And that's kind of important for some of the mills here in the state in that they only will take wood from land that's been certified that it's sustainably managed. So having this kind of American Tree Farm system is the particular certification group, and the symbol is in the right-hand corner. It's good to have that to increase the possibilities for selling wood throughout wherever it may go. One of the big ones that people know about the Managed Forest Law program is this protection against annual tax hike. And what it's saying is basically that your taxes will be very predictable. It won't be based on the whims of the county, the elected officials in your county or township. The rate will stay the same for a fixed period of time. It may go up a little bit after a certain amount of years, but it'll stay fixed pretty regularly. And I'll talk a little bit about the rates in a second. And because those rates are actually fairly low compared to what you pay for recreational land, which is what forest land are many times considered here in the state. And your tax, and it's a deferred tax as well until you do a timber harvest on your property. And you can close, you're not, when the goals identified was to open more land to the public, but you have the ability to close. You don't have to open your land to the public when you participate in the program. You can close a certain number of acres of it to the public and still participate in the program. And you get some technical assistance with your land, with your property, and any questions you might have. So there's a number of benefits. Some of this is, for some people, it seems like a great deal, but I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the requirements of the program, and then you might not think it's such a great deal. So now communities also benefit quite a bit from this program being in existence. Again, they get this continued supply of wood to the mills that are within many of the communities within the state. And so you keep those, and forest industry jobs are usually very high-paying jobs, and so many communities want to keep those industries in their locale or within the state. And a portion of the taxes from timber sales go to the counties that the land is located in. And many of the county elected officials that I talk to are not very happy with the managed forest law program because they don't think they're getting a fair return. They're losing out on property taxes. They don't feel like the yield tax that participants in the program pay is enough to offset it. But the DNR would argue that's not necessarily the case, and there's other benefits that come to them that they don't necessarily realize. And again, this issue to a community that you have more open land for recreational people to utilize. And so you're bringing more people into your community to spend some money, if nothing else. That's it for elected officials. That for many of them, that's what they want to see to keep the local businesses in shape. Okay, so let's talk through what you need to do or be to actually participate in the program. You have to have at least 10 plus acres, and it has to be contiguous acres. So it can't be 3 acres here, 4 acres separate from it, or 5 acres over there. It has to be all in one block. It has to be productive forest land. It can't be open swamp with a few trees scattered here and there, or an open meadow with one big oak tree in the middle of it. It has to be productive forest land. I'm going to talk a little bit more about those in a second. You have to have a management plan, and so that's something that you're going to need to either pay for yourself or get parcel funding to pay for through the Wiffle Gap program. So it's a great place to get funding for a plan to enter the managed forest law program. And you have to commit to a fairly long time span of 25 or 50 years. And to many people, that's something they'd rather not do, and many people think, well, I can just get out after a while. But there's a penalty if you do try to get out of the contract at some point. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And the penalty is not something to ignore. Okay, so what does it mean to have, when we say it has to be 10 or more contiguous acres? So here's a aerial photograph, so a photo taken by an airplane flying over a bit of land, showing the different features on the property. And within this white bordered area, let me just bring up this tool. Within this white bordered area that I'm highlighting with my red spotlight, let's say that's a parcel of land owned by someone that's interested in entering the Managed Forest Law program. And you can see that this part of the land right here is actually farmland. There's a road running through the property, and then there's 3 parcels of forested land that are surrounded with a white line. One is 8 acres, one is 35 acres, and one is 15 acres. So if this person wanted to enter into the program, only 2 of those parcels would be eligible to be entered into the program, the 15-acre and the 35-acre. That's what we mean by 10 or more contiguous acres. So this 8-acre parcel could not be entered, but this 15 and this 35-acre parcel could. Okay, here's another example, and we'll look at what we mean by it has to be 80% productive forest. Let's say this white outlined box is another parcel of land and owner is interested in entering into the Managed Forest Law program. Here's a 35-acre parcel or block of land that's in forest. This 3-acre opening this 3-acre parcel block is open land. There's a creek running through here in this 14-acre block that's also open swamp. And then there's an 8-acre block of forested land here. So this parcel is not eligible to be entered in the program because of that entire piece of land at 60 acres, only 43 acres is productive forest land. Now let's say the landowner decides just to enter the smaller part of their land. That includes this 35-acre block of forest land and this 3-acre block of open land. Well, that actually is eligible to be entered into the program. So they could enter up to 38 acres of land of this 38-acre parcel into the Managed Forest Law program. So here's some more requirements for entering into the program. You need, like I said, you need to have a plan, and the plan just can't be any plan. It can't be something you wrote down on a piece of paper. It has to be written by someone who has gone through some training and is certified as a plan writer, CPW. And the DNR has a program that they train foresters on how to do that so that they can write these plans. So you have to work with someone that has had this training, and many of the consulting foresters have undergone this training so that they can write plans for the MFL program. So how do you get the plan? Well, you can hire someone that's gone through this training, an independent certified plan writer, or you can submit your MFL application, and then it will be sent on a referral list to a group of foresters who are certified plan writers, and they will pick it up, and then you can work with them on how much it will cost them, how much they will want to be paid to write the plan for you. Now, DNR Forester may write the plan for you, and may is the big word there. Many times throughout the state, DNR foresters have a lot of other responsibilities on them, and they don't have time to write plans. And in fact, the policy right now is for DNR foresters to refer people to certified plan writers to write the plan, because DNR foresters have other priorities that they have to do, these private lands foresters. And so they may write the plan if they have the time, and none of the other plan writers that they sent that referred your application to want to work with you on the plan. So it could happen, doesn't necessarily mean it won't. And again, you have this time commitment of 25 to 50 years. So something to think about. And I mentioned that again, and I'll probably mention it a third time too, because it's a commitment that is not, it should be taken lightly. So this plan is actually quite a robust document. It includes a lot of information about your forest land and the stands of timber within your forest land. So you might have a stand of a plantation of red pine and on one part of your property. Another part of your property you might have a natural stand of oak and maple. And another parts and other stands within your property. Some are younger, some are older. And there'll be descriptions for all of these stands within the management plan, your MFL management plan. And then you'll have a management prescription based on that. And it's also based on what your goals are and how you want to use the property. Those are all integrated together to create this management plan and objectives. The plan will also outline what some mandatory and optional practices that you will need to do. And the mandatory ones are the most important because you must do those practices. And I should say these mandatory and optional practices aren't something that's coming up arbitrarily. They're really based on what you want to do with your property and this other notion that the MFL program is there to continue this flow of forest products off private lands to the mills. So there's going to be some mandatory practice, and this is where many people discover that they don't want anybody telling them, they don't want anything to do with the program because they don't want anybody telling them how they should manage their forest, what they should do on their land. So if that's your case, the MFL program is not for you. But if you can live with some mandatory practices, people telling you have to do certain things, and if they fit in with your goals, then this could be a really good fit for you. It will also describe some forest health impacts that might be taking place, some threatened and endangered species that might be on your property, and maybe even things like eagle's nest or other wildlife habitat sites on your property. And finally, it will include a slew of maps that show these different forest stands on your property, your trails, and will outline the different management prescriptions that you're going to have. So like I said, there's a lot of information in these things, and they're a great resource to go back to when you have questions on why things are being done and what's going on your property. Okay, so you are going to be required to do certain things as a participant in the Managed Forest Law program. Your first one is to follow the management plan. And specifically, it's to fulfill these mandatory practices. And that's what trips up many people in the program. They think, oh, I want to get into this because I can get a great tax rate. It's going to cut down my taxes dramatically, and don't realize that you're going to have to do something no matter what. And most of it is going to be timber harvesting. You might not like it, and so don't enter the program if that's the case. You're also going to be responsible for submitting a cutting notice, a timber harvesting notice, to the county that your land is located in. It's a minor thing. It doesn't take long to do, but you're responsible for doing that. And if you're working with a forester on a timber harvest on your property, you can ask them to submit the cutting notice, but you're ultimately responsible for doing that. And you're also responsible for paying a yield tax on any timber sales that you conduct on your property. And it's only 5%, but you're still responsible for doing that as part of your participation in the program. Now, the tax rate is what gets many people's attentions. If you leave your land open to public access, you pay $1.67 an acre. If you close your land to public access, you pay $8.34 an acre. So it is a pretty dramatic difference, but many people love the close. They don't like the idea of the public being on their land. They have a lot of problems with liability. They have a lot of worries about things like that. And so they close their land. And you can close up to a maximum of 160 acres per municipality. And so this idea of open lands the recreational opportunities are things like hunting. That's primarily what the land is used for. And many times people will go into the DNR offices and ask where are the MFL lands that are open, so they can go use those lands for hunting. But they're also open for fishing, cross-country skiing, hiking, and sightseeing. Here are some of the mandatory practices that you might be asked to do as part of your management plan. I already mentioned harvesting timber. It might be thinning a plantation to make more room for your trees to grow, the remaining trees to grow, or a natural stand. It might be you might have a plantation of pine trees on your property. These are conifers, and you might need to remove the competition that's grown around them. It's called releasing the conifers, so they have more room to grow and they can be more successful plantation. You might be asked to do some reforestation of land or doing some post-harvest treatment. All of these things coincide with your goals for your property. So you might be asked to do some reforestation, but that might fit in with your goal to attract more wildlife to your property. So you might be planting trees and shrubs that attract wildlife. You might also be asked to do some soil conservation practices, which might entail planting some trees as a buffer along a stream so that the trees that planted there hold the soil in place. Now, a DNR forester can play a role in this process. Primarily, they're there to help you explain parts of the process. They can do some work as part of your MFL plan, depending on what your situation is like, the size of your property. If you don't have cooperating foresters interested in doing work on your land, primarily they're there to ensure that you comply with your plan more than anything else. If there's mandatory harvest taking place or that you need to do, they're there to ensure that you do that. But if there's work that needs to be done, primarily they're going to, more often than not, I should say, they're going to refer you to the cooperating foresters. And I'll talk a little bit more about these cooperating foresters in a few minutes. But like I said, they may establish a harvest. Depending on their work schedule and how much work they have on their plates. As I said, MFL is not really for everyone. There's many people have this concerns about opening their land to the public, or that they might have to do some mandatory practices. So you really need to keep those kind of things in mind when you're weigh those versus the tax incentives that you might get. But I encourage you, if you're interested, to talk with your local DNR forester about what that might mean for you. What kind of practices you might have to encounter if you were to enter the program. The early withdrawal. I just said that there's a 25 to 50-year commitment. If you decide that 10 years into the program you don't want to be part of this anymore, there are penalties and fees you have to pay. And one of them is that you have to pay the back taxes. All the taxes that you didn't pay that would have been normally assessed on your property. And you usually have to pay them all at once, which can be a significant amount of money. So don't go into this process lightly. If you're interested, I encourage you to talk with the DNR forester about what it means for you. I also encourage you to look at this publication that's listed at the bottom of the slide, Wisconsin Managed Forest Law, FR 295. It's on the web page under the Assistance with Your Woodlands class heading that Chris pointed out in the beginning. I encourage you to there's a lot more information in that publication. There's a lot more. I could spend 2 hours talking about the Managed Forest Law program, but we just don't have, we couldn't cram so much into this short time frame we have. Okay, so let's start talking about what kind of assistance is available from people here in the state. So what a forester is someone that can help you. They're a professional that's trained in forest management. They can help you do things like develop a plan for your property, figure out what your goals are and how to achieve your goals in the forest that you have. If you're interested in doing timber harvesting or tree planting, they can help you do those kinds of things so that you have a successful practice, whether it's planting or harvesting. They can help administer a timber sale harvest. They're a professional, well-trained to do this, and someone you really want to work with, especially if you're going to do some kind of timber harvesting activity. The unfortunate side of all this is that they're not a profession that's sanctioned by the state, like a doctor has a certificate from the state saying, I am a doctor that the state has given its blessing to go out and practice medicine. Anybody can hang out their shingle and say they're a forester. It's the same with a logger. Anybody can say that I'm a forester, and so you really need to be diligent about asking them questions about their background and experiences and follow up with the references when they give them. And so here's a brief list of things, of starting point of things to look for a forester, and I'll go into more details in a second, but education, do they have the same philosophy as you? Or do they want to meet your goals? Or are they just interested in making some money? All these things are important to think about. But here's some more specific examples. Does the forester have the range of experience and training to meet your needs and your property? Some of them are very good at selecting timber to be harvested. Some of them are very good at writing plans. Some of them can do all those things. You need to find the one that fits the needs that you have for your property and to meet your goals. Also, some of them are very busy, and so they might be a highly recommended forester, but they can't get you because they have so many clients until like 3 or 4 years from now. So you have to make sure that their timing fits with your timing for the activities you want to pursue. And you also want to check with, as part of this reference check, how reliable are they? Do they show up on time when they said they're going to do? Do they do the things they say they're going to do? And do they have the insurance, like workers' comp and liability insurance, when they're working on your property? You don't want to be liable for something that they do on your property. Make sure they have those kind of things. And make sure the management options is similar to scope. Can they do the kind of practices that you want to accomplish on your property? Do they have that kind of experience? Have they done them before? You also want to ask them about how they want to be paid for their services. Some of them charge by the acre. Some of them charge an hourly rate. Some of them only charge a fee when they do a timber harvest. So you need to clear that up before you go into any kind of contract with a professional forester. And you want to ask them for references. If they don't want to give you any references, that's probably not someone you want to work with. So get some references from them and talk to those people, what they thought about them. And if you're curious, this forester in the picture on the right is using a device called an increment borer to measure the age of the tree. He drills this device into the tree, pulls out a sample of the core from the tree, and measures the growth rings to tell the age of the tree. Well, there's different kinds of foresters. I've kind of talked a little bit about some of them already. There's DNR private lands foresters, and then there's these private sector foresters that are private consulting foresters and industrial foresters. And there's a group of foresters called cooperating foresters that include industrial and consulting foresters. And I'll talk about each of those in a second. But I've got another poll that I was hoping you could fill out, answer some questions for me. Choose the one that best suits you. What was it? And you can choose more than one at this poll. So click the ones that you think are most appropriate. What's that? Okay. Well, they can answer more than one. Just a few more seconds, and then we'll close the poll and continue on. All right. Let's talk a little bit about DNR Foresters. And they're a group of folks that work for you. They're state employees. They're funded through what's called the mill tax, and they're positioned in all the counties within the state. And there's different kinds of DNR foresters. Some of them work primarily in wildfire prevention or protection and suppression. Some of them work with the county forests and helping them to manage a forest. But most of them work as private lands foresters, and they're there to work with people like yourselves to help them manage their forests. And so they're kind of there to provide guidance and motivation to do sustainable forest management on private lands. Some of the things they can do are, walk through your property and offer some verbal advice as to things you can do. And this is the landowners that I've talked with and worked with, this is something that a lot of them want to have done, just someone to come out and take a look at their property and offer some advice on things they should be doing. And the DNR foresters can do that with the time as they can, well, with as much time as they have. Many of them are quite busy, and as you can imagine, with over 300,000 forest landowners in the state and maybe just a couple hundred DNR foresters, there's many of them are overwhelmed with requests for them to come out and walk their property. And so many times, some of them can do it, but many times they can't do that in a very short time frame after the request. So it's something they can do, and I wouldn't be afraid to ask them. If they say they're busy, maybe just ask them for some advice as to how they, describe your land and ask them for some advice. They can do some timber harvest establishment, but more often than not, they want to refer you to these cooperating foresters, who I'll talk about in a second. But there's some circumstances where many of the cooperating foresters don't want to work with in a particular situation. It's more often than not due to the size of the land. Like I said, some of the private consulting foresters get paid by either the acreage or the time, and so if it's a small piece of land, they don't want to put a whole bunch of time into it and not get paid much. So many times, if it's a small parcel of land, it'll fall to DNR foresters to help people do the management on their property. And so they might do some marking of trees for timber harvest and helping to market the timber sale. Another big job that DNR foresters have is tree planting, and they help to coordinate the delivery of state trees to the different counties. So there's these tree nurseries scattered throughout the state where they grow trees for sale, and the DNR foresters can help to coordinate the delivery of those trees to local counties and local woodland owners. They can also help to coordinate the use of planting machines that you can see in the lower right-hand corner of the screen that can be pulled behind a tractor or other piece of equipment that make planting of trees very efficient, especially on flat lands. So you don't have to plant them by hand using a shovel or a planting bar. And they can also connect you to crews of people that are out planting trees. And so if you don't have, there's not a planting machine anywhere nearby, but there's people that are planting trees, you can pay them to plant the trees for you if you can't do it yourself. So that's a great resource they can supply if you're interested in doing some tree planting on your property. All right, let's talk a little bit about this group of private consulting and industrial foresters that are out there. And these are the private consulting foresters they're your advocate. They're someone that you pay to accomplish what you want to accomplish on your property. They work for you either on a contract basis or an hourly basis, and they work entirely for you. An industrial forester is someone that's paid for, employed by a mill, usually a sawmill or a pulp mill, that's out there whose job is to get timber to feed the mills. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're not thinking about you in the process. And in fact, I've worked with many industrial foresters who have a very conscientious view of working with landowners, and that they want to help you achieve your goals on your property. And you kind of understand it when you think about it. Their reputation is everything they have. If all it takes is one bad incident, and their reputation is shot, and no one wants to work with them, and they can't buy wood anymore. And so many of them do a very good job of working with landowners to do a timber harvest that helps achieve their goals. So don't be afraid to work with industrial foresters. I don't get any fee for plugging their program, but there's a good group of folks out there. And when I go and I encourage you, if you do want to work with a forester, get the references. Talk with people who have worked with them and see what their opinion is of them before you go into any kind of agreement with either a consulting forester or an industrial forester. Now within these groups of foresters, some of them have gone through this certified plan writer trainings and have this CPW after their name. So if you want a plan that's going to be developed for your property so you can go in the Managed Forest Law program, you need to find those kind of folks to work with. And then there's a group of cooperating foresters. And these are, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that program in a minute, but they're probably the best group of private consulting foresters to work with that have entered into this program with the DNR. And then there's some folks that don't participate at all with in any of these different kinds of programs, like consulting foresters who do their job without any of these other kind of programs involved. And they're just as good. They can be just as good of folks to work with as the folks that are certified plan writers or cooperating foresters. The key is to talk with the references they provide and see what the other landowners think of their work. As I said, the certified plan writer folks are just ones that have gone through some training that know how to write a plan for the Managed Forest Law program. It doesn't mean they're not good foresters or can't do other stuff too. It's just they have this a bit of experience and knowledge that they can write a great plan for you. The cooperating forester program is something that was developed by the DNR to provide to landowners a pool of foresters that they can refer them to that manage forests and have the same kind of philosophy and ethics that the DNR foresters have. And the DNR foresters they're supposed to be there to provide objective viewpoints for landowners on how to manage their land. They're not driven by a timber sale or making money via timber sale or getting paid. They're an objective viewpoint on sustainable forest management. And so there's this group. They set up this standard that cooperating private consulting foresters and industrial foresters can live by in the cooperating forester program that says, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to manage the same way a DNR forester manages land. So they have the same kind of ethics. They're going to manage using the same guidelines that DNR foresters do. So these are, if you have to choose among 4 private consulting foresters, these are the best folks to work with. And you can go to your local DNR forester can provide a directory of cooperating foresters that you can use to pull a sample of foresters to talk with about your property if you want to do some work from. I'm going to show you a couple of links that you can utilize to get some more information about the CPW folks and the cooperating foresters. These are lists that you can access to find folks in your county that your land is located in. I encourage you to get this web resources document that I've plugged 2 or 3 times now. That's available on our website that has all of these links. But I'll leave this up a few seconds. There's folks that are copying this down. Okay, moving on. So let's talk a little bit about, you want to work with a logger, what to look for in a logger. And I put up, this isn't a poll, I just put some things up that, and as you read through them, you'll probably realize that the most important thing to look for in a logger is the last one, which is they're interested in working with you to achieve your goals for your woodlot. And as I mentioned with foresters, anybody can call themselves a forester. And anybody can call themselves a logger. There's nothing that certifies them as a logger or not. But it's a profession nonetheless. And so you want to find someone that is interested in helping you achieve your goals for your woodlot. And you're looking for many of the same things that you look for in a forester when you're looking for a logger. And I'll go through each one of these in a bit more detail. And I think training and education is the most important thing you want to be looking for when you talk to or pursue, or a logger comes to do some work on your property. And the cream of the crop of loggers here in the state are folks that are this Master Logger certified. They're certified in this program called the Master Logger Certification. And if you're interested in finding a list of these loggers, I encourage you to call this number, 1-877-284-3882. And they'll provide you a list of the master loggers, or of loggers that are working under this Master Logger Certification. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that program is. And also ask them, where they get their training from. There's this great organization called the Forest Industry and Safety and Training Alliance that provides a lot of the training for foresters here in the state. And if they say they've gotten training and they've gotten it through FISTA, then that's really the best place for them to get training. Also see if they participate in some kind of other kind of certification program like the Sustainable Forestry Initiative. When they are certified under this program, and it's usually a third-party auditing program, they have to live up to a certain set of sustainable forest management guidelines. That's really a great, if they have that after their title, they're really working under the best guidelines for the benefit of every landowner and a forest resource. And see if they participate in any professional organizations like the Great Lakes Timber Producers Association. They're the professional organization for loggers here in Wisconsin. And if you want more information about the Great Lakes Timber Producers Association, I encourage you to go to their website, but be careful not to get the Great Lakes Training and Penning Association. That's another one that I found that when I did a search for GLTPA. Okay, this Master Logger Certification, it recognizes loggers who have attained this utmost level of training and experience and demonstrate an unending commitment to sound forest stewardship. And like I said, this is the highest form of recognition in the logging sector in the state. So if you can work with a master logger, that's the best way to go about business when you're doing the management of your forest, especially for timber harvest. Here's a number of the areas of responsibility they're required to adhere to and cover in their forestry operations. And like I said, they're third-party audited on all of these things that they're done. After timber harvest, someone comes in and checks to see if they're compliant with all of these things, protecting water and soil quality, adhering to government regulations, following certain standards, participating in training, following aesthetic management techniques, which many people don't realize they have to do. But this is very important for this program. And adhering to the management plan, a big one for many landowners, and following sound business management practices. You also want to make sure that the logger you work with has experience in what you want to accomplish on your property. Some of them are well suited and well experienced to work on certain things like this. Some of them are well designed to do clear cutting, while others are better off doing selective kind of harvest on your property. Make sure that the ones you work with have the equipment and experience to do what you want to do on your property. And a forester can help you find that kind of experience that you need. Also go to references. Again, just like a forester, check their references. Get them, if possible, go and visit the sites that they were just at so you can see what a harvest that they conduct looks like. And don't be afraid to ask questions. If they don't give you references, it's probably someone you're not wanting to work with. Last one, make sure they have insurance, especially things like workers' comp and public liability. And make sure that covers all of their crew and any subcontractors that might be on the property. And under many circumstances, a logger will own a piece of equipment that's like pictured here, but they subcontract with other people to haul the logs that they've cut into the road, and they might subcontract with a trucker to haul them to the mill. So make sure they have all the insurance, and it covers the entire contract term. Okay, finally, I'll run through some of the resources that are available to you that you can tap into to get some information or connect to other woodland owners in your area. We've already talked a little bit about woodlandinfo.org. It's an extension website for forest information. There's a lot of publications on there beyond the Learn About Your Land series that you can tap into to get more information. The private land section of the DNR Forestry website, dnr.wi.gov forestry/private, is also a great resource to tap into for what information DNR Foresters offer. If you're interested in getting maps, again, all of these are on that web resources document on the web page. The DNR offers a great resource for getting maps on the web, as does the Natural Resource Conservation Service. So they offer soil surveys on their site. Again, these are on that web resources page or document. Now, there's a number of organizations in the state that can help connect you to other landowners that might offer some information or assistance for to help you figure out what you want to do on your property. Things like the Wisconsin Woodland Owners Association, they have chapters throughout the state. They hold meetings annually, and they hold educational programs as well. It's a great way to learn a little bit more about forest management and connect with woodland owners in your area to talk about, if nothing else, ask them about foresters they work with or loggers they work with. Also, the Wisconsin Family Forest Program was kind of in transition now, but they can also offer some assistance and in a way of connecting people to other resources. And I talked a little bit about the Tree Farm Program. You can get some more information at wisconsintreefarm.org. They're another place you can connect other landowners and see about the certification program. Again, all of these links are on that web resources document. And that takes me to the end of my presentation. If there are questions, we'll happily answer them now. So we've got, well, we're a little bit over 1 o'clock.
This is Chris. I'm just going to chime in real quick. If anybody has questions, again, feel free to type them into the question pod. And if somebody needs to sign off now, feel free to sign off. We will be posting any questions and along with the answers at the end of the session when we get those reported to us from GoToWebinar. Okay, I see someone has their hand raised, but I'm not able to unmute you at this point, so if you have a question, just type it into the chat pod, please. Okay, we have one question. Can I get a list of local landowners in my area who have worked with these various programs to get their opinions?
I would suggest talking to the local chapter of the Wisconsin Woodlands Owners Association. They could really connect you to the landowners in your area that have worked in these programs. There isn't a list per se that is published that people have worked with. It's probably public information, but I couldn't point you directly to a list of people that have participated in the program. If you're also interested, I would talk with your local DNR Forester. They could probably tell you who has worked with these programs. You're in Price County, talk with the foresters there and see. They could probably tell you who has participated and connect you to those folks if possible.
The next question is, do you need to have your land surveyed before logging?
You don't necessarily have to have it surveyed, but it's good to know where your boundaries are so that there's such a thing as called timber theft. If you happen to, if the harvest, the logger happens to go across your property boundary into your neighbors, you can be accused of timber theft because you're ultimately responsible for that happening. So you don't have to have it done, and in fact, it's a good. But if you want to, it's a good thing to have done. A forester that you work with can help show you where your boundaries are. It won't be as official and as precise as a surveyor would do. They can help find your corners and help put lines in, and they can help make sure that a harvest that takes place stays on your property and doesn't go across the boundaries.
We have a few more questions, but I just wanted to give people a heads up if you are signing off. When you sign off, there will be a little pop-up screen that's our evaluation for this session. I would appreciate it if you could fill that out. It shouldn't take more than 2 minutes to fill out, so when you sign off, you probably will see something pop up. Bill, the next question is, what role does the county forester play? And maybe you want to explain the difference between a county forester and a DNR county forester?
Yeah, that's a great question. Some of the counties here in the state have their own county forest land, and so a county forest, there might be a forester that works on that land that's employed by the county. And so there can be some confusion because DNR foresters are also called county foresters. But DNR foresters usually work primarily with the private landowners, and so there's a bit of a difference in there. The county foresters usually won't work with private landowners. Their responsibility is to work on the county forest, but the DNR foresters work primarily with landowners. So looking to talk with your DNR forester that works in your county. I know that's a bit of a semantic kind of thing, but in fact, if you try to work with your county forester that works for your county, they probably won't be able to help you. Work with your DNR forester. They're the ones there being paid to help you manage your forest land.
All right, the next question is, are these programs available to out-of-state landowners? And I believe that the same person asked the question, how does this apply to tree farms? If in the process of Bill answering that question, you could clarify a little bit about what in particular you were asking applies to tree farms. But Bill, if you want to answer, are these programs available to out-of-state landowners?
Yes, they are available. If you own property here in the state, many of those programs are available to you as an out-of-state landowner or what's called a non-resident landowner. Does it apply to Christmas tree farms? That's a pretty good question. I believe so, but I couldn't give you an explicit yes or no answer. And Chris has kind of a puzzled look on her face too. I've never heard that question. That's a good question to ask whoever you're looking to get funding from. If it's a DNR forester or someone in NRCS to see if it applies to them. I would think it does, but I'm not sure.
All right, we have a question. Is it difficult to get a logger to harvest a small parcel like 20 acres?
That's a great question and a very common situation. It can be depending on the kind of timber you have on your property. Let's say you have 20 acres of 50-year-old black walnut, which is a very valuable tree species and the wood is very sought after. So you might not have any problems finding a logger to harvest that. But if you have 20 acres of red maple that are very small trees, you might have a hard time getting a logger to do that, to do a thinning on that, because for them to bring all their equipment in and to do a small harvest and only get a little bit of profit off it, it's kind of a scale of economies kind of thing. It's not worth their time to move all their equipment for a small sale. So you can have problems on small parcels of land. It's something that many landowners are encountering, and there isn't a great answer to do that yet. If you can work with your neighbor to do a timber harvest together, that's your best way to get something like that accomplished. But many times people don't know their neighbors or never worked with them before. I don't have a great answer for you. If you can, like I said, try to work with your neighbors to see if you can set up a harvest that you can all do together.
Okay, I have another question, Bill. It says, my neighbor has hundreds of acres under MFL. The property has no public access. However, can I choose to put only a portion of my property under MFL and leave the property boundary out of it?
So maybe, I think I understand where you're coming from. Are you saying that maybe the center part of your property, you'd enter the MFL and be surrounded by land that isn't open to the public? Or maybe not. Okay. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I was thinking that she was, or he was saying that, yeah, that the piece of property would be in the center and the boundaries wouldn't be part of it.
You might be able to do that. It depends. No, you're not? Okay. Chris is shaking her head. No, you cannot do that. You can enter certain parts of your property into the program. You don't have to enter the entire block. But that's something you have to work with your DNR Forester to determine which parts you can or cannot enter. I know people have tried to enter. They've put up 3 rows of red pine around the edge of their property and asked to enter that because it's 10 contiguous acres. There's a lot of qualifications beyond the kind of things I've already said in the way of what is possible to enter and what isn't. And so you need to talk to your local DNR Forester that works in your county, the county that your land is located in, to figure out specifically what you can or can't do with your property.
And I will add that you can, if your neighbor has their property open and you're concerned about people using your neighbor's property that's open under MFL to get onto your property, you can still close your property. And people, I believe there's a fine for actually entering private land that's closed to the public. But I'm not entirely sure. And you can post your property, I believe, if you want to, or at least post the property line so people know that they're entering closed land. So we have another question. In MFL, can you create a closed perimeter around your land? Oh, that's somewhat the same question. With 160 acres you take out of MFL and keep the center open. And I don't believe that you can do that as part of the MFL program. Bill, if you had any other insight on that.
No, I think you're probably right.
And Kenneth, there was a question about whether this applies to tree farms, and I'm assuming Bill answered that with the MFL, but I wasn't sure whether that was something else you were hoping to accomplish with that question. And with that, I don't see any other questions unless anybody has any. All right, well, I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us today, and if you had any problems or concerns during the presentation or any problems with the presentation itself, let me go ahead and email me. You should all have my personal email address. I would not use the email address that you got communication from GoToWebinar for. And with that, thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next week.